Welcome back to Arcane Rush, and this time we're going to do something completely different, and we are going to do a tier list. Now, a few of you have been asking for this, so I'm going to give my opinion on what I think. And we're going to do two well, actually a lot. We're going to do like 7 tier lists here, but starting off, we're going to see which dealers I think are top tier and which are bottom tier, which ones you can kind of focus on to get the best builds. So starting out, as we said, we do have the dealers, and we're going to start with Mortimer. Now, we're going to start pretty strong with Mortimer because I believe that this dealer, Mortimer, the undead Mastro that he is an S tier. Controversial, I know, I'm aware of that, but he is an S tier. I just feel like everything in his build, and I'm a big lover of elves, so they were really good for him with getting Foreign Legion there, and I think he deserves to be an S tier. Now, I know a lot of you might not agree with what I pick here, but it's not factual, it's just generally my opinion, who I've enjoyed the most while actually playing the game. Next up is Fiddle. Now, one of the original dealers, and honestly one I've not really played with too much, so I'm going to put him C tier. Right, just because I've not really played too much with him, and what I have played with him, he seems kind of very base level. Start of the game, the first dealer was introduced to the Arcane Rush Battlegrounds scene, and I kind of joined in a lot stronger when Captain Tuck was around, so Fiddle's kind of been always on the back burner for me and never really explored too much, but there is some good aspects there in Fiddle, so he could potentially be higher. I think he's really a high C and like a low B, but we're going to go C at the minute because we have other dealers that just fit better higher up the table. Now, as I just mentioned, the Tuck was the first one, but then Gorm really became where I sunk my teeth into the Arcane Rush. And I think the addition of Nords was absolutely fantastic when Gorm came into play. And Nords honestly just got better and better as seasons went on, with Rhino Rider being one of the key additions there. But Nords were a good focal point. You had the Warrior when an enemy was frostbitten and gained like stats of 1+1 or 2+1. You then had the Wolfpack or Wolfgang that attacked every time an enemy was frostbitten. That eventually got nerfed in the updates and like the patch, essentially because it was too strong. And the Berserk ability was just fantastic. You didn't need to worry about health. You had just to go hells to the wall and have an amazing attack and destroy that. In other seasons, they just built on that, but I think the addition of Nords has actually been fantastic. They've always been fun to play, with little twerks and little tweaks that you have to try and work out when playing Nords in what direction you want to go with. Do you go down the Yeti route or do you go down the Frostbitten route? Next up is Mimi. Now, addition to kind of like, as we're saying, like Mortimer didn't introduce a new race, but Gorm did with the Nords, and Mimi introduced Gnomes. Now, Gnomes are fantastic, but when Mimi season came out, and Mimi as a dealer, I don't feel like there is enough ways to get augments. This season, there's absolutely a brilliant way to get augments, with Kickstarter abilities and like modules that you've applied, being permanent stats to certain units. I think she's actually perfect at the minute in the current season with Messiah, but as her season as a whole, it was cool, it was intriguing, and it was a little bit fun, and kind of linkability was the main aspect there, not as much as moduling your units as much, whereas we've seen with the other dealer, I think it was Fun Cycle, actually who had the Fun Cycle? It was Mortimer that had the Fun Cycle, and I think the Gnomes did get better then, and even better now, once that's been removed and kind of all the augment abilities that you can actually do. But I think, as I said, Mimi as she came in is a mid-level card. Now, talk with the Pirates. Now, this is where I first kind of really went into Arcane Rush, but didn't really understand it too much. But by God, Pirates are so easy to play. They're simple as anything. Sinbad was introduced to them, which has made them even better for the payoff. But you had the attacking pirate, sends a bounty onto it and does like 3 extra damage. You had the bounty's beak or peak beak that one's die sets 2 bounties on a unit, and then you have like blasting booties. You have Tidehunter's Crusader, which is when an enemy that has a bounty on it dies, he then takes their stats of a random enemy. He could get so high, get him golden, and he would take double the stats, or the last 2 enemies that had bounties on them. Pair that with Zahara Deadshot. When she dies or attacks, she shoots first 2 of those bounties. And I just thought Tuck was amazing. Pirates are always good. They scale so high and you're just easily opening treasures. You could essentially play it blindfolded and never really mess up. So for me, on like levelness and skillness, I say that would be kind of on the same par with Mimi, because Tuck is really good to play. The other units itself, you're not focused on Pirates. If you want Pirates, I would essentially say go Tuck. But again, there is other Pirates out there that are actually better. But I think Tuck's a really good solid base and you can get high Pirates from that. Now on to the current season dealer, and that is Messiah. Now, Messiah, when ninjas came in, they were absolutely fantastic. But, here comes a big but, and I know a lot of people will probably be annoyed at this. Ninjas are boring now. They're literally so boring. When you come up against them, there's no skill involved at all. Well, there is skill, you have to just know what you're looking for, but you get 2 certain units that just summon stuff, and then you can scale them up in your hand. The board looks weak when it originally starts, and then all of a sudden like 17 different units spawn in. Her dragons are good though, so I'm kind of focusing on like one unit or like one race per dealer, and what they're kind of focused on. Like, don't get me wrong, ninjas are really strong and can be really good, but I think in terms of like an entertainment value from the game, at this point now, they're so boring. I absolutely hate losing to first strike. I thought that was going to be horrendous, like range or something like that, but they do the damage and don't take it. It just, too many units have it, in my opinion. It's such an overpowered thing. Like, you can scale your ninjas up to 500 and have them like 20 HP. And if they've got multi-strike on that, then they're not dying. They're just taking out units, because like you cannot scale your units that high in terms of health and benefit on the other way. But I just genuinely believe like ninjas are, like, Saya's kind of season is boring. Like, your demons are too hard to play. For me personally, there's no elves, and I do love elves. Dwarfs are really tricky as well. They can be good, but they're kind of like mid. And honestly, if you look at everything else, Nords are just weird as anything. What else is there? Gnomes are good. I really enjoy gnomes this season, so that kind of boosts Messiah up. And even our undead are not that great. They can be good, but again, there's a lot of work that goes into it that you're going to only pay off once out of 5 times. So really, your only option are ninjas or dragons, which are just really boring to play. Well, dragons are not so much as boring, but ninjas are. Like, I just don't feel like you're ever filling your board up with ninjas. You're just waiting for these 2 aspects, and then you just let the game do itself. Whereas you want to be hands-on, you want to be thinking about stuff, like I did with previous seasons with elves. I keep going back to elves, or even dwarfs. Like, dwarfs are interesting because they add different aspects into the game. Like, you got to have cheers units on the board and see what their benefits are, how they will trigger. You got to understand how they work and make sure you got certain ones linked up. Gnomes are good because you got to line up augments, make sure loads of them are on the board. And there's an aspect to selling and playing units there that you can also gain benefits from. Whereas ninjas, you really need, what, 3-4 cards, and you can just win the whole game? On the board, anyway. Obviously, you need them in your hand, they need to get high. But on the board, it's just pretty boring. You're just waiting for your units to die, to then attack, and they're going to scale anyway, naturally, if you have the certain aspects set up. And it's naturally just one way for everyone. You don't see different types of ninjas. Obviously, they're first season, so I'm being very harsh on this one. And I do believe ninjas will be improved, and they've just been introduced, and it's a great addition. Like, don't get me wrong, first strike, if it works for you, is fantastic. But when it's against you, it's really boring, and kind of waiting for the next season now. Like, we've seen everything that possibly could be added. Obviously, we have a few adjustments into the patch, but my opinion, Saya kind of either goes like C at the minute. I wouldn't change her because her cards don't actually update. But in terms of a race, like, ninjas will get better and more entertaining. There'll be different aspects, different things we need to learn. But I really do believe missing out on like orcs and the elves and pirates really cost Saya this season. And I think like a next season will be better. Like, I miss pirates. I actually love it when they come into the gauntlet because they're so easy and you get them so high, and you actually feel benefit for what you're doing. I say they're easy, but you got to manage your hand as well, and you got to know which ones you want on the board. Like, a couple of seasons ago, they're like there's Booty Bill and the Crab, and like, they're 2 different ways to get permanent stats onto your units. For using that, there's the one that looks like the Pokemon Rayquaza. Kickstarts open 2 treasures, then dies open 2 treasures, get that golden, it's 4 and 4. And there's ways to get like treasures into the game without just bounties. There is different aspects to that, but obviously they are additions to new seasons, and that's what makes a race itself. But we're focused on the dealer. Saya goes mid because her relics are also really bad. Like, I struggle with her relics so much in terms of actually thinking of upgrading the store when I'm playing Saya. Do I want to upgrade, or do I want to take the unit? And obviously, if you don't upgrade the shop, you get left behind because you're not getting the higher units. But then if you do upgrade the shop, you're taking the hit early on, and you need to make sure you scale amazingly just to scramble through. And then you've got no setup before because your relics don't really benefit you. Like, one of our tier 2 relics that I use and gives 3+3 to a unit in your hand. Like, if I'm upgrading that on turn 2, which is natural, you can upgrade the shop on turn 2 to gain that advantage, I got no unit in my hand, so that relic is then irrelevant to me. Or then I have to buy a unit, keep it in my hand, to then upgrade the shop on turn 3, and I'm not seeing that benefit till turn 4. And by that time, I'm out of the group stages. Unless my single unit at the front is really strong with my hero ability, then that's an aspect there, but like, kind of that relic's out. The Dragon Ruby Heart one I do enjoy, but again, it's like further down the line benefits. I just think early game Sire relics maybe need a little tweaking, and she could be maybe a mid-tier dealer, but as of right now, she goes bottom tier. The relics are a real issue. Dealer aspects, like, obviously the relics got updated as well when it kind of came to her, and the whole hero acquisition got updated, so who is it? I think Fiddle, Tuck, and Gorm all have the same relics and they're really good relics. Whereas like trying to make individual relics for each individual dealer going forward is going to be hard, or there will be some dealers that kind of suck. And I think Messiah is one of the ones that suck at the minute. Okay, so moving on now to Fiddle's Races, in which race I think is the best in each dealer's aspect. Starting off with Fiddle, the OG dealer of the game. Now, starting off with Orcs, I think Fiddle's Orcs are pretty solid. I mean, you can gain some good stats there. They also benefit other races. When you're also using other races, you can drop an Orc in there and not feel too bad about it. I think they go just below top tier. And now this information is based on my, obviously, opinion and my experience with this, and exclusive to this dealer. So if you're going up against this dealer, Fiddle, against Fiddle, what would you feel beneficial for? Moving on to Elves. Now, I really enjoy Elves, but they're not as strong as it could be. And they are a bit technical, so I think a B situation for the Elves underneath the Orcs. Probably would prefer to go Orcs because they just have a little bit of that edge. If you are early game focused early on, well, you can benefit stronger. But late game Orcs are really good. And Elf late game can be really good as well, which you can see from my Fiddle like Elf video that I did. But I just think they're kind of like in the middle there. They're there or thereabout in terms of like Fiddle's aspect. Neutrals are always good, but they'll be a C because they're missing a key card, which I'll talk about in other dealers, that I just think elevate neutrals to the maximum. Dwarfs for Fiddle are early introduction there. Early introduction for the dwarfs. Again, I think they kind of go on par with the elves. Like, they can be good, but they won't be too good. But I think I'm tempted to put them kind of last in terms of what Fiddle has and his arsenal there. You'd void him pretty much all the time because they're good, but the cheers ability is very hard to trigger as much and the stats really aren't as permanent. So that what's kind of put dwarfs near the end in terms of Fiddle. Demons on the other hand though, demons are absolutely fantastic. Learn how to work demons and they are fantastic. They get so high, they got different summoning abilities in there. And they're honestly, I think, just great. If not, I mean, great, obviously do. I put them like top tier. Like, they're one of the best demons I've actually seen and experienced as much. Because demons are the ones I was always used to avoid because they never really came in for me until too late. But now I've got the understanding of them, I think they can get crazy high and do get crazy high, which leads me on to dragons. Now, dragons can be harsh, but I think Fiddle, as a dragon expert, there is other dragons that are better in terms of races, so that's why I think dragons are always solid. You'll get good stats from dragons. You cannot complain about dragons ever because your stats never get wasted. You very rarely ever sell a unit unless it's a weak one, but in most cases, 9 out of 10 times, you're just devouring that unit, so you always get the stats. The effort that you put into building units up on the board is always beneficial to you because you can just then devour that with a dragon and keep those stats on the board and get your dragons nice and high. And then we have Undead. Now, Undead for Fiddle is like almost near the bottom. It's not as bad as Dwarfs, and honestly, it is above neutral. So I'd say it's like a low kind of mid tier, but like a high bottom-ish tier, like second bottom tier, because it's good when you can get a summon ability to trigger in, but it's very wide, I've noticed, with Undead. Not like Mortimer's season or the season before that, but who was before Mimi? I think it was before Mortimer. But Undead originally here starting off are very wide, not very high in terms of attacking ability. So if you've got a dragon that's like 1,000 attack and 1,000 HP, your Undead aren't doing enough against that. But then if you got against Orcs, which are all about the rage, you can keep attacking, which you can benefit that and overpower the Orcs with the Undead summon ability, but that's very rare that happens. Your units will more likely get annihilated because they'll have Overwhelm or something like that. That can come to ruin your plans. Next up, we're going to look at Tuck, but let me know what you think on these ones as we progress, or wait to the end and leave a comment of which race you've had the most success with a certain dealer, or which race you're struggling with in a certain dealer that you can get with, or even if you disagree, let me know. But Tuck now. So now we're on to Tuck. Now, Tuck was the introduction of pirates, which in my opinion, Tuck is the best. So let's not hesitate there. Let's not even get that twisted. There is other good races in terms, not races, but dealers with pirates, but Tuck is a foundation. Tuck is a pirate himself. And that's why pirates are S tier here, because they're fantastic. 3 different ways to actually benefit from your groundwork in that. You can go down the bounty route. You can go down the treasure route. You're always opening treasures when it comes to pirates, and I do love pirates because they're so easy, but there are also different ways to play that, different ways to benefit from the plunder abilities being triggered. He doesn't have Sinbad, So I will maybe mark them down 1 point for that in terms of pirates, but what you benefit from the rest of the stuff. Looking here, like the tier 5s, you've got Blasting Booty, you got Tide Hunt Cruiser, you got Sahara Deadshot. Those are free tier 5s that all offer a different way to benefit from a tier 5 ability. The Blasting Booty is how many treasures you've actually opened, and that's what you'll benefit from. He gains 2+2. You got Tide Hunter Crusader, which is bounty. When a bounty's died, he then received that stats. If you kill a big guy on the enemy team, he then takes those stats. He can go from like a 4-4 base standard level when you just introduce him, have play 1 round with him, and then he can go up to 120. Like, depending what you actually kill. And Sahara Deadshot's an interesting one because you need bounties on the board, and then she triggers, hits those bounties, could essentially kill them before she attacks. Or even if she dies and not had the chance to attack yet, she still does damage to those bounties. It's a different angle you need to investigate. There's ways to get bounties on the board with Bounty's Beak, the attacking pirate, what's it called? The Bringblade Buccaneer. He puts a bounty on a unit and then gains damage and puts that in that way. You've got other units on the board that give you bounties, which is Ezra One Eye. You've got the Brine Scale Pact, which is when a different ally receives a treasure, that also gains that treasure, so you can scale up 2 units for the price of 1 and 1 treasure. If you got a whiskey, like bottle rum, whatever that is, that treasure, that then goes to everyone, plus it goes to that Brine Scale Pact, again, because a different units are using it. So you get 1+1 for that, but then you essentially get like 6+6 if you got 6 pirates on the board, and they're getting that benefit from that. Dwarfs now, I think they're kind of mid at the minute. They become good in a certain different season, but for Tuck, they're just like the middle tier. They're good. They can have great runs with them. I'm not discrediting that for a fact, but can you have the best run? Not as much. I think in this one they have really good kickstart abilities, and there is ways to get permanent like stats on the board with the Braze Horn buff to this unit during combat are permanent. Then you got the Skyforge, which is a tier 4 during combat. Buffs you give to the dwarf ally on my right are permanent. So there is ways to get your like cheers abilities trigger in and keep the buffs permanent on the board. Then you got Kickstart abilities, which is Corn Stormhammer. You then have Buffalo Brawler, which is hurt, give a brew to all my allies. You got then Scathed Copperhide, which is barrier. Cheers, give a dwarf ally barrier until next turn. You've also got the Runic Protector, which is hurt, get a brew, but he then also takes the damage of the unit in front of him. So that's essentially the early edition of Link ability, which is with the gnomes, but this is in dwarf, so he can then take damage, so your unit at the front can then keep doing stuff and kind of maybe give you that edge because your strong unit in front of him won't take damage maybe until hit 2 or hit 3 if he survives long enough. Now Undead is unreal, if I do say so, with these abilities, and there's 2 cards in particular, well 3 essentially, that you want to go for every run that you know you're going to have a successful, and these numbers can get really high and they can even rival pirates in an aspect here. But that is the Cranial Cascade, which is when an undead ally takes damage, give 2 HP permanently to that. So that gets really, really high health ability there and can survive a lot. If you pair that with a tier 5 unit, which is Plagueis Wretch, which is when an undead ally takes damage, give units in my row 1+1 permanently. In combat stats that stay permanent are always a winner in my book, and I think these undead deserve to be just below pirate because you pair them with the Undying Soulbreaker, which has taunt, it has revive, and it has a death ability which deals 1 damage to all your units on the board. So then you've got those 3 cards essentially, so that's getting 2 hits, so your Cranial Cascade goes up 6 HP, plus that with a Plague Wretch, which is 1+1, so you're then getting damage into your back row, which is where you essentially put them, into your back row, and they're gaining health and they're gaining attack ability, which you can then pair with like a summoner or a different one, which is there, which was the Malice in a Casket, which is a tier 1 unit, which is hurt, gain damage. So it's getting hurt, it's gaining damage, you know it's going to do damage, it will also take damage, which also boosts up everyone else, and that's what really makes me put Undead in that aspect. Neutrals next, and like I said, they're always going to be kind of like down near the bottom because they're not the whole focal point of the dealer. They were just good and little aids that help you get on there, but there are some better aids than other ones, as we'll get onto with different dealers. Bit 4, Tuck, I feel like they have some good aspects. You got the Bonded Bliss, which is gain 5+5 if it stays in your hand. You can keep that in like your hand for like a couple of like turns, there you go, and you're getting like 10+10, 15+15 that you can then put on the board and use a different way to use that. If you use dragons, you can then devour that by just keeping that in your hand if your board is full before you get golden units, and then devour that and you get better stats overall. But It's not really, it's kind of hard one to actually deal with too much, because you got to sacrifice you free coins to buy that unit and then keep it in your hand, and then decide when to actually play it to actually reap the benefits from it, because maximum you go like 10 turns, independent if you don't get it early or not, you don't benefit too much from it. But a tier 5 neutral here is the Balance Keeper, which we just paired with the Undead. Essentially, if you pair it with that Undead that only gains HP, the Balance Keeper then balances out the stats, so you have equal stats on either side. So if you've got really strong HP on this Undead unit, and you haven't managed to find that tier 5 which gives the damage, you can then play Balance Keeper on that, which will then balance its HP, balance its attack to make it the same as its HP, and you can go from like 150 to 100, which is a whole different playing field in that aspect. And it still goes up, so you can then find another Balance Keeper to do that again, or if you're just gaining really top heavy stats and you want to balance them out and keep a level playing field, and you got really strong attack from Malice and a Casket, which gains damage and not really gaining HP, you can then Balance Keeper him, which will enable him to survive longer to gain more damage and also trigger units in the back. And I just think that's a really good addition into the neutrals there. Deadly Joke's always great, and that's kind of really it for the neutrals, and there's better ones in later seasons that I just absolutely swear by. Every time I see them, like, you gotta take them, in my opinion. Elves for Tuck, though, they're, like, I'm biased because I love elves. I think we put them in with the neutrals, right? Elves are good. Elves can be good, right? Let's not like distract that or disguise that in any other way. They can be good. They're not good in this season, and what you have to actually use and what you have at your arsenal there. And that's all we're going to say on that, because elves just are elves. You know elves. You either love them or hate them. I love them. I'm biased to it. What I do love, though, is orcs. Right? Orcs are actually maybe could be like an undead tier. I'm glad pirates with the pirate dealer are the highest. But orcs could be an undead tier, because they're great. Like, orcs have rage ability, they have overwhelm ability, they have damage ability, and I just feel like their stats gain stats upon stats. You've got one that has like slay abilities, which is you can gain coins from early on from tier 1s, which get you up the board faster, get you up the shop tier. You've also got like the Charismatic Warlock, which is in turn give 2 damage to orc allies with lower damage than me. So your orcs are constantly scaling. If you scale up this one unit, he'll keep scaling up the other ones. You've got a tier 4 Red Fang Ranger, or Rager, which gives rage to the ally of his left. So then you can do that from kickstart, and so you can get rage on your ally that's really strong. Pair that with the overwhelm one, which is Shield Breaker, which has all the damage and can do overwhelm. He can take out 2 units and he'll never die when he's attacking. His health will go down to 1 HP though, but he'll never die when he's attacking. Pair that with Multi-Strike. Multi-Strike, overwhelm, and rage. Forget about it. Keep scaling them up with all the different other orcs that can scale abilities there, and you're just laughing all the way to the top of the table, and taking home 50 coins or trophies, whatever we get for winning. But the 50 of that, you take that home easily with those 3 combinations of like keywords into that. Dragons now, and now dragons I think are just always going to be a staple point. They're going to either really be taught like 2nd tier, or they're going to be just below 2nd tier. Like, I'm talking just, because there's something in them that just don't get them over the edge there, but like that's never really going to happen. And that's going to be the exact same here with Tuck. This dragon style play, I absolutely love. It's all about devouring, right? Dragons are always about devouring. You keep stats on the board permanently, all the time, every time. But there is two that I actually really like. A tier 4 and a tier 5. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a Crimson Trovemere, or whatever that is. That devours a unit on its left. Before it devours it, it gives its 3+3, and then it gives 2+2 for every unit is being devoured at the end of your turn. So naturally you just stack up some of the other ones. You've got the Adjacent Worm or something like that, or you've got the Chaos Embodiment, which are units that have death abilities there. You got the other one, which is Death Give Barrier, and Death Give my damage to a random ally. There's loads of death abilities there that you can trigger with that unit that's going to devour on its left, that's given that stats to then benefit everything else. Naturally you'll be filling in those gaps by finding those units. The other unit that I want to talk about with dragons is Kingslayer Vagaroth, or whatever that is. It is a tier 5, and it's when an allied dragon is summoned in combat, I immediately devour it and gain its stats permanently. Like, you joking me? Are you kidding me? So we're going to get units on the board and you're just going to take them up and take them stats. That gets really high. That gets fantastic, which is why dragons are actually there. But you pair that with the Cadenza, the Eggbound, which is Kickstart, fill your board with random dragons, start turn, get a plain copy of the first unit I summoned last combat. He literally naturally fills your board anyway of any gaps that you have, that you then have the Kingslayer eating all those stats up there and just gaining from Kickstart ability, and they're permanent stats that they gain. If you don't have that, you're filling your board anyway, and filling your board's always good. It was the introduction of capture as well with Maw and Tuck Dragons, where they Maw does capture the opposite enemy, damage I take also dealt to that captured unit. So your enemy's got to destroy their own unit in order to defeat Maw. And if Maw's stronger than that, then that's going to absolutely destroy the enemy team, because they'll stay and they've got taunt. So your other dragons can still do their thing without being targeted. Like the enemy team's always going to target Maw if it's on the board because of taunt, and you're essentially doing a trade. Like your Maw might actually kill 2 units for the price of 1, the one it captured and the one that's attacking it, because it's just not strong enough to actually take it out without dying. Which then leaves us with demons. Now demons are kind of like in between the mid tier, like the B and C's of this all. They're not as bad as elves, because I know how elves work, but they're not kind of as good as orcs or dwarfs there, because you got to discard a lot and it just takes too long to get discarding. You kind of got like 2 early game discards, some that discard themselves naturally, but early game discards you're looking to like tier 3 before you're really seeing anything beneficial. You got the Imposter at tier 2, but really it's taking too long to actually get to where you are and where you want to be, so you kind of have to go down a different avenue, which in that case you're better just going pirates, because you're doing that, or whatever avenue you're going down, you're benefiting that before you even switch over to orcs and getting to that point where you're at the higher tier. I mean, if you get a good run and a good luck, then fair enough, go for it. If you get an Imposter by turn like 3, use Imposter and you'll naturally discard stuff anyway that will benefit you while you're upgrading the shop. And you pair that with a Mimic, which gains turns, different discards to different things. Some like do discard themselves, which is fine, they've got the Fiddling ability, but that's why demons go there. And that's how Tuck's like races are actually looking. Let me know what you think about these, as same as Fiddle, or like I said, wait to the end. Moving on to Gorm now, and I'm going to split this into 2 parts and do the newest Steelers in a second part, but our final one we're going to do now is Gorm. And this was the introduction of Nords, and I think they were fantastic. So let's not beat around the bush here. You know where they're going. Nords are going in S tier, because what they had, like Seasoned Mountaineer, was fantastic in my opinion. Wolfgang, fantastic before the nerf, would attack every time an enemy was frostbitten, but now it only happens first time it sees it. We had Iceblood Berserk, which was fantastic when it's frostbitten. Sorry, when frostbite is applied, that then gains stats permanently. So that's amazing early games. You're talking tier 1, tier 2 straight out the back there. Yeti was fantastic, did a lot of bugs though, but if you could get that scaled up, that had like 7, 8, 9 survives or something like that. Have that surviving so many times, and you got an absolute unreal unit from that early game stuff that you're just having there that's going to survive anyway. But you get further on, you got the Kale Frost Feather. After I damage an enemy for the first time, frostbite it up to 5 times, get that leveled up. We had Ice Berserker Grag, which had the Berserk ability, a Chill Mainzer, which had the Berserk ability, you had the Arc Titan, which is the Berserk ability, and also Frostbiting Animals. You had the Northern Protector, which is the early game, like kind of like a B tier Rhino Rider in my opinion, but that Berserk survive, give 3 HP to different allies, survive 5 times to level it up. You had the War Mammoth when a survive ability was triggered. You had the Ice Queen, which was taunt, survive, then triggered another survive ability from a different unit, so you could scale your wolves up, you could scale your Yeti up, you could scale like, or get the Northern Protector to trigger, or the War Mammoth to trigger, or any other of the tier 5s that we have actually mentioned. So that's why Nords, quite rightly so, go in the top tier. Undead now, they're undead were may as well been dead this whole season. You didn't really want to use them. It was summoning abilities and they just weren't too great. Your tier 5s didn't really have a massive payoff for everything you were putting in before, which puts them really there. There's no point going into that any further. Looking at the cards, I'm still in agreement with that. Based on my opinion, obviously, you might have had a different success with Undead, but in my opinion, they were just kind of dead and should have stayed, like in that situation, should have stayed in the grave, stayed on the ground, because they could have been left behind this season. But I think one has to. Like, don't get me wrong, Undead are still good, but also one has to be the worst in a season for it to actually be beneficial. Nords came in, which were superheroes this season, so one had to suffer a little bit, and it was just Undead. They had been there for Fiddle and Tuck, so it's only fair that they get punished a little bit, because with different aspects you want to change, and then you don't know how not good Nords are going to be and how people are going to react to them, and they just seem to be really good. Elves now honestly, Elves sucked. And as an elf lover myself, elves sucked this season. There was too many combos that weren't like permanent benefits, and you didn't really reap the rewards from it. And it was kind of like all about attacking. It wasn't like, oh, gain these massive stats. Could bounce stuff to your hand, but I mean, honestly, they sucked. When you get onto the other stuff, it's just so much better. Because you had pirates. Absolutely fantastic pirates, if you ask me. Do they go A or do they go B? I think I'm going to put them B because of the other ones that we have there. Now, I've actually just looked at their cards and they're going A. Like, I don't even why I know. I don't even know why I considered putting them B, because they were fantastic. You had Captain Beefheart, tier 3, which is sell, give a random pirate 3/3, and the random keywords. Random keywords onto your pirates there. Your tier 1s were kind of like what you expected there, but you want to trigger like bounties here, which are Tide Hunter Cruiser. But you then had 2 additional ones, which is Tidal Wrath. When you get a pirate, when you the first pirate you sell, and each turn you give that stats to somewhere else, so you can move your stats around if you had really strong pirates. So you didn't really want to keep and wanted to sell and get the benefits, which is what the Seraphine Bloodwind, which is sell, get 2 pirates when that's in the shop, gain the stats of the pirates you sell. So not only are you getting a double benefit for those if you have the Tidal Wraith and you're selling one of your other units are really strong, because the stats from Tidal Wraith will then go to units on the board. You're then getting the stats once that is in the shop. But then if you don't get good stats, well, you can keep that to the next round actually. Then sell that, get 2 pirates for that, which might help you get a golden pirate, because you might have 2 and you're looking for that third one. It can give you that aspect there. But then stats get dispersed again. So you're essentially getting free benefits for those 2 units just being in use. Obviously you need another one to originally have the stats, but you can benefit that way. You have Fiery Filibuster, which is play, give a random ally pirate 1/1 for each coin you have spent this turn. That was crazy. You could end up spending like 16 coins or something like that and get 16 plus 16. I'm sure at one point there was like a glitch, and it actually was. It was Turncoat Corsair, which is sell, gain 1+ coin for each pirate you have currently like sold this turn up to 7. That used to be unlimited. So you could keep rinsing them and looking for them and getting pirates really high. Pirates got insane that season that they had to be capped. And that's why they deserve to be an A tier with Gorm. Neutrals now, this is going to shock everyone. They are like a B, bang in the middle, and they got the addition of 2 cards I absolutely love. One, the Blessed Matreon. I swear by the Blessed Matreon, I am blessed sometimes when she appears. And that, which is play, choose a unit to give it end turn, give it 2/2. Get that leveling up, get that golden, keep stacking on units, bounce it back to your hand, if possible, using some elf magic there. You can bounce it back to your hand, get to play again, or you just sell that one, get like another one that you see when you're shuffling, and keep your stats permanently going if you've not got the other combinations working too well. Absolutely fantastic neutral if you ask me. And only being a tier 2 is fantastic. You can get early game scaling there right off the bat before you get the tier 5s into play. Pair that with a pirate that you're going to sell later on, then get Tidal Wraith. Forget about it. We then have Progressive Trader, which is sell, get a tier 1 unit, increase this every turn. So you keep that on your board for 5 turns, and then you get a tier 5 by turn 5, essentially. If you get that straight out the bat, it's tier 2, so you get that by turn 6. Say you get that on turn 2, get on the board, by turn 6, by the time you're actually getting into the hearts, you can get tier 5. And if it's one you actually like an early game bounty one, like the pirates we were talking about there, I mean, he's getting his stats so early on that you can power over the rest of the board with that. And I just think they were pretty good this time. We had Reversing Squire, which is play, give a unit 4/4, then swap its damage and HP around. Puppet Master was fantastic, which is end turn, give a different allies 2/2 for each race you have on the board. Even if you got one race, 2/2 is great stats to give to 5 different units out there, and that's worth it. And that used to be a lot better until the patch came in and they took that down a bit. And it used to be like 5/5 or 3/3. That's a huge difference. All your units are getting 3/3. If you have 2 different like races on the board, so you got Northern Protector from the Nords, and you got some bounty stuff from the Pirates. That was 6/6 before the nerf. But even still now, that's 4/4. That's great. Like, how could you even complain about that? Get 2 of them on the board, get golden, you know, it's doubling up like that. I just think they were actually really good this time, and that's why neutrals deserve to be in the middle above the other 2 races there. Dwarfs now, dwarfs were good, but like they're not as good as neutrals, which sounds kind of crazy. This one, you managed to get lots of brews and could get that all firing up there and getting stuff sorted. But really scaling your brews was kind of hard. And actually seeing the benefit from them, if you weren't giving them in the combat mode, that was really it. But they could go really well, like don't get it wrong. But there is like certain keywords, like you got the brew mains, which is cheers, gain 1/1 and a random keyword until next turn. So your cheers like stays permanent. So if you got a 1+1, that cheers is going on there. Then it gains another 1+1 and a keyword. But I mean, after that turn, there's like some stats dropping down, the keyword's being lost. It might give you the edge in the combat before that you're not going to then reap the benefits from before. But there is like taunt end turn, give a brew to allies on my bro, which is the Vault Keeper. You had the Clumsy Attendant, which is hurt, get a brew. You had the Voyager Brewer, which is like when you sell, get 2 brews, which I feel we're kind of lacking this season in ways to get brews. But I mean, like, we can get brews now this season, it's just in-game stuff, and they do go permanently, and there is ways to get them permanently. But I think if you combined these two, like Gorm and Messiah's dwarfs, in terms of get dwarfs out of combat and dwarfs in combat, you could be onto a winner there, which we might see in future seasons, but as of right now, that's what puts the dwarfs there. Demons now, they kind of go alongside the undead and the elves, because they are good, and they were good for Fiddle, but they just never really reached those heights. They started so strong, and like no one really could compete with demons, but this time you can compete with them. With the fact of pirates just taking over and Nords being introduced to this season, demons really fell off a bit in the last 2 seasons. That we're talking from Tuck and Gorm in that example there, that they fell off enough that didn't really benefit too much. It was all about keeping stuff in your hands, kind of along the side of elves and managing to bouncing stuff to your hands and getting stuff there. And the stats didn't really merit the reward and effort you were having to put in for demons, in my opinion. And that now leaves us with dragons, and by God, are they the potentially best dragons you will ever play, and that's with Gorm. And only because you have early game kind of stats. You have a 2-5 as your base tier 1. With taunt, so you can then get other units around it. Relics are really good for Gorm and all the kind of things we talked about before. But like that Basilic taunt 2-5, it's doing essentially, it's going to hit twice. It's going to either take a hit and then do a hit, or it could take out 2 units, like if you got like the Doggo, which are neutrals, they're kind of low stats, and you can take out both of them and not even die yourself. You got the Curious Joris, which is a 6-1 flying ability, very weak, but devour that and you're getting 6 stats straight off the bat. It's going to take out a lot of things. Like the benchmark for kind of like your first combat is to either have enough units on the board that can overpower it, or have enough that like health or attack that mounts up to like 6, I would say, is your benchmark. And that's like, you know, you're going to get a draw at least. Anything higher than that, it's going to be really hard to do from your first turn. You need some kind of sort of magic, and maybe in the gauntlet mode you can do that, but in natural like regular combat, you're going to struggle to get above 6 in your first matchup on the first turn. So a 6-1 solid to get the draw. You then have a tier 2, which is Breeze Heart, which is death. Allies gain 1+1 permanently. That's allies. That's not even dragons. All your units benefit from that. You have the Devour abilities. You got Flying, which is death. Summon a tier 1 dragon, increases tier by return. But you get into like the big daddies. You got the Wrong Betrayer, which is end turn devour the ally to my left, which gains the stats. It's not as good as Tuck's dragon, which gives stats, but it's a good way to clear stuff off your board, because then you can then pair that with the Hatamalas, which is when an ally is devoured, give your dragons 4+4, because that would be devoured in the recruitment stage. Allies are getting a 4+4, so that's almost better if it's 2 cards. So it's not that much better, but it is a way of working around that. You've obviously got the Kingslayer Vargoth again for another season, which is when an ally dragon is summoned during combat, Devourer is getting stats permanently. Pair that with the Tri-Wraith Zalfazar, whatever you pronounce that last part, which is death. Summon 2 dragons with death ability, they attack immediately. But they don't get the chance to attack immediately if you have the Kingslayer, because he will have been eating them. But they have a death ability, right? So if you pair that with the summoning of the Nesh Raider, which is flying, when an ally dragon is summoned during combat, it gains my damage. If you have that tier 3 Nesh Raider sitting at like 100 attack at the back of your things there, then units are being summoned that Kingslayer is going to eat. They're going to stack upon each other. I faced up against that and it actually blew my mind, because I was like, oh, this is going to be easy, and I walk over it, then I got too much stats. Oh, I was wrong, because every unit that was summoned had like 100 attack, and then Kingslayer was just eating all of them, and the stats became permanently. You're not losing those stats that are being summoned, because they're gained permanently. This is honestly, it's really hard to combat against, and everything will have a death ability, so there's stuff being spawned in, shields being getting brought in there, there's like stats being given from those 2 tier 5s alone, which is better than, I believe, than the kickstart ability of the previous seasons, which comes to dragons. But like I said, I'll do a part 2 to this with the newest dealers in a different part. But let me know your thoughts originally right now, in my opinions, any you agree with, any you disagree with. I want to hear all. I want to hear from you. Until then, I'll see you on the battlefield.